fame. If you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Boomer Pod podcast, where we interview movie and TV celebrities. Our guest today is stunt performer Dan Bell. Welcome, Dan, and thank you for being with us on the Boomer Pod.
No, my pleasure.
Dan, let's talk about your career in stunt performing. How did you get started in the business?
A guy that knew me was doing a non-union movie up in the Bay Area, and I had a fight background, and he wanted me to do a fight scene in some jail scene, and I kind of took off from there. That film never came about, but it got me on the path of being a stunt guy. And I had a high school girlfriend, and Kimmy, her parents were the Eppers, and that is a big name in the business. So that was kind of the intro. But then years later, this guy asked me to do this fight scene, and I did, and it kind of went from there.
All right, you said you had a fight background. What does that mean?
I've got 22 documented bar fights.
Documented by whom?
That by me and my family. Yeah, we sat down a few years ago and tracked down every fist fight at the bar that I've been to, and there's 22 of them.
I knew this was going to be an interesting interview, but you are really going to it. Go ahead. Tell me about all that.
Well, I got expelled out of high school because I beat up a kid and put him in the hospital, and it kind of started from there. Now, I'm not saying I started all those, and I'm no angel, but a lot of them were kind of like, after high school, I was into logging and fighting fires, and a pretty tough group of guys, heavy drinkers, and so that's the background is bar fights. I did a couple of tough guy contests years ago, so that's what that was about.
And did you win?
I get teased about how many fights I've lost. I get stunt guys today that give me a hard time about, Bell's a brawler, but he loses quite a few. So.
That's amazing.
So that's a lot of years of fires and, stuff like that. So
what part of the country was that?
I'm sorry?
What part of the country were you in when you did all those other things?
Most of that was I was logging in Humboldt County. I was what's called a log jammer. We would haul a chainsaw down into steep canyons and spend about a month or so cutting up log jams so that fish could pass these log jams. I worked I was a fed. And so a lot of loggers and all that. And then I was a heli repeller in Oregon. And that was my fire background. Part of my fire background was being a heli repeller, which is probably one of my proudest accomplishments.
What is a heli repeller?
A heli repeller is someone who repels 250 feet out of a helicopter into a wildland fire.
You didn't even need to go into the movies. You've got a life that is far more adventurous than everybody I've talked to.
Oh, yeah. The stunt stuff was actually the hardest part about being a stunt person are the politics. You gotta know some people, and I didn't know anyone. Well, I knew a couple of people, but I didn't know people, and certainly no family in it. So my biggest hurdle was getting into the loop of some of these guys. And I did have a lot of background, fights, firefighter, heli repeller. I'm a commercial pilot, avid scuba diver. I travel globally for that. And I did have some applicable talents, but the hardest part was, meeting who you needed to meet to get those jobs. And it's just one of the greatest careers you could ever want. And there's some great, great people in that business.
I agree. I agree. Let's talk about some of your films. Let's go to Contagion. You mentioned that with Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just a few days shoot. There's a scene where we're getting rowdy in a drugstore and I throw a chair through the window of the prescription guy, the doctor, and smashes the window. And that was a fun deal. But like I said, that was a short job, but it was great working with some of those guys. And a lot of the stunt guys on that particular movie are still very good friends of mine and started the Stuntmen's Association and all that.
That's good. That's great. How about The Wedding Ringer with Kevin Hart?
Yeah, I doubled Josh Gad on that. I've doubled him a few times. Getting banged around in the back of a truck that had a hood over my head and running through the city and of LA, and I'm getting tossed around back there, and I went through a glass table for him. And Josh is a great guy. In fact, I've been lucky to double, because I'm a big guy, so I double some big guys. And I've been very fortunate to have guys that are loyal to me, and you don't see that whole often that much. But Josh was a great guy, and I've worked with him a few times.
Okay, and that's Josh who? What's his name, Josh?
Josh Gad.
Okay, okay. How about Domino with Keira Knightley and Mickey Rourke?
Yeah, Domino was good. That was worked with a great family, stunt family, very traditional. The Pacerni family, I can't imagine you haven't heard of them. So Charlie Pacerni, very legendary. His son Chuck and Steve, we all worked in Vegas on that, and great time. I got in a little, well, I got in a little trouble on that trip, but family.
Don't tell me about the trouble. I like trouble.
I don't even know why I said that.
Yes.
I got into it with the bouncer at a strip club and found myself on the way home in about 3 days after that. I got the job done. I doubled an actor. We got all shot up and all that. But yeah, my night off, I got in a little bit of a ruckus. So, which, it sounds bad, but it's not as bad as it sounds. I'm old school stunts, and there's a lot of old stunt people that got in a few bar fights in their time. So I'm just trying to carry on the tradition, Larry.
Well, I was in the whiskey business for about 10 years. So I've had my share of bar fights. But I wouldn't go up against you, my friend.
Well, like I said, I didn't win them all.
How about Rent?
Those movies, there's a lot of great movies, and like I said, I'm a small fish, but some of my better stunts were on some of the smaller films, and it's really just being lucky on who your actors and what they're doing. And because the ND, what we call ND stunts, nondescript, you got a bunch of guys getting shot up or whatever, that's one thing. But I'm being a stunt double is really where the action is. If you want to be loyal to the business, I've got a half a dozen: Kevin James, Josh Gad, Dan Fogler, just some great actors that I've doubled for a long time. And they mention my name. So that's important to anybody that's getting into this business.
Well, now, what are some of the most memorable scenes that you've done? And they're small movies. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Larry, I'd have to say, I understand Robin Bonacorsi.
Yes, I do.
Okay, we call her the Rev. She got ordained to marry my wife and I, and she's my very best friend. And anyway, her and I and a bunch of stunt guys, we were on a movie called Palmer's Pickup, directed by Christopher Coppola. And I'd have to say, off the top of my head right now, that was probably one of the great gags. I had to take a motorcycle off a pier out in Louisiana at night And I had my longtime, very good friend, Tom Fickey, who passed away, on the motorcycle with me. And it was just a riot. It was a one-take deal, you know, and that was probably the greatest ride I've taken. I've been blown up and shot up and on fire and all that, but taking that bike off that pier, that was a son of a bitch. Let me tell you, that was a slapper.
Now, tell me a little bit about Robin. I interviewed her. She's on my list. And so you can see the interview if you go to BoomerPod 13 on YouTube, and you can see her. But she never talked about being a minister. What was that all about?
Yeah, so her and I and a couple of friends went down to Mexico, and I was with my high school sweetheart we got back years after high school. And her and I got together, and we started seeing each other. And I was nuts over Debbie when I was in high school. Let me tell you, I met her in 8th grade. And anyway, I started dating Debbie, and we all went down to Mexico to a place that Robin has. It's about a couple acres, little trailer and everything on the cliff of the ocean, gorgeous. And I proposed to Debbie that night around the campfire. And Robin, she asked about getting ordained and doing it. So she comes out at the wedding as Father Sarducci, mustache, the whole Marianne, the hat. She comes walking up behind the podium thing as Father Sarducci. And we started quoting Dr. Seuss in our wedding vows. It was so fucking funny. Everybody was on the fucking floor. It was a riot. I mean, I couldn't begin to remember the poet or the poems that we read, but it was just a riot, and a lot of stunt people there, and Rocky Capella and Debbie Carrington, and just the list goes on. But it was just a riot. And so she got her, and then she has since then married a couple other stunt people. So that was the story. That's why we all call her the Rev now, the Rev.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. It's a good thing I didn't know that, or I would have brought that up in our interview.
Yeah, that was a hell of a deal that she did and all that. So yeah, and I just love Robin to death.
She's a good woman.
Oh, great stunt person. Never says anything bad about anybody, you know. Yeah, I love her to death.
Yeah, she's terrific, terrific. Tell me about the movie Rent with Anthony and Rosario Dawson. Rent.
Yeah, Rent. I also worked with Robin on that. It was a big fight scene. I was a cop, and we beat the hell out of a bunch of hippies and well, I was gonna say bums, but I guess they call them homeless now. But anyway, it was a big fight scene, and we just beat the tar out of a bunch of guys. Huge. There must have been 15 or 20 of us going at it. So fun. Because the fight stuff is really some of my favorite stuff. I mean, I dig the car work, horse work. I've done it all that stuff, but a good fight brawl is I like. You know, I'm not into that jujitsu, Bruce Lee flying through the air bullshit. I'm talking about trash can lids to the face, shit like that. That's a real fight.
What do you trace your temper to, my friend?
Honestly, I've been in most of those fights. I'm not even really that upset. I mean, there have been many times I beat the shit out of some guy, and we ended up having beers together.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't really get that upset if somebody wants to get it on, and hey, you know, I'm not going to walk away. But honestly, I've grinned at a lot of fights.
That's amazing. And how's your physical shape right now?
Well, I just got done flipping a tractor tire a quarter mile around the high school lap this morning. So I don't know. What do you think?
Look at this guy. How old are you? Yeah.
I just turned 65.
Jesus, God almighty in heaven.
And let me tell you, Larry, that fucking tire is taller than I am. I'm very proud of that.
And you did that because?
Oh, just a workout. You know, I do it a couple days a week other than working out at the gym. I like to get outside and flip that tire around and, you know, kind of get into a zone.
Are you still working? Stunts?
Not that much. I haven't worked in months. think the last job was, yeah, it was a movie about the Godfather. It was screening, or no, streaming. Like I said, I'm a little old school. So when we talked about the film, I'm like, so when's it open and all that? He goes, oh, it's streaming. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? He's like, it's streaming on Paramount Plus. I'm like, oh, okay. And that was months ago. So that was also Danny Fogler. I've doubled him for years. And I look just like the guy. And funny that we have the same name, because many times we get called, I have Dan come to the set, and it's the wrong Dan.
That's amazing. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment, Stan?
I'd have to say, if I had to pick one, I have to say I'm pretty proud of some of those accomplishments, but I'd have to say hands down would be when I made the Hello Repeller crew for the Forest Service. It was a very demanding, it's a very elite firefighting unit, and making that crew, that's still a highlight. And we're very close. We get together at least once, sometimes twice a year for Hello Repeller reunion. And it's either Vegas or Reno, and we just have a hell of a time.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And how about challenges? Current challenges.
Do you mean challenges? You mean as I noticed that I was kind of thinking about that. Now, when you say challenge, you mean like disappointments, or just
No, I mean
life challenge?
Something that will keep you from a goal unless you work on it.
I really can't think of anything that was
That's okay.
a challenge that would get in my way of accomplishing a goal. The only reason that would happen is if I gave up on myself, and that never happens.
Yeah.
I've accomplished a lot. I keep real busy. Last year is my last year as a firefighter, but I fly airplanes, and I keep real busy on everything. I got a small company, and I'm kind of bragging a little bit here, but
That's okay.
as far as that, I don't really have that. The only thing I'd have to say would be when Debbie passed away, my wife. I went down a bad road there.
Okay, what happened?
She got ovarian cancer and passed away, and I found myself in some pretty bad area.
Yeah.
So if there's any challenge that kept me from anything, I'd have to say that first couple of years after Debbie passed away, I was kind of an asshole.
How did you deal with it?
I was drinking too much and went to jail a couple times, and found myself down and drunk in Venezuela, and I decided that was it. It's about time to go home and straighten out my life. So since then, that's been good, staying off the juice as much as possible and trying to keep a good attitude. When you get, I don't know if anybody is out there, it's really never, when you don't care about yourself and your family and your friends, it's very, very sad. But I've gotten past all that, and with a lot of help from the Rev, that's for sure.
And how long were you married to Debbie?
Well, let's see. We got married in 2005. She passed a few years ago, so yeah.
Quite some time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we were together a bit before that, and but Debbie she was great. Everybody loved her. I used to joke that if it wasn't for Debbie, I wouldn't get invited anywhere.
What did she do? Was she in the business?
What's that?
Was she in the business?
No.
Movie business? No. What did she do?
No, she was IT for a big company.
Oh, okay. Where do you hope to be in the next 5 years, Dan?
Well, I'd have to say, just to sidestep a little bit, Larry, I told you about the crew from the Hello Repellers.
Right.
Well, that is a crazy bunch of guys. Fast Eddie, Snuffy Smith, Legs, Dan Bell, Big Norm Richard. And there's a guy back east that is writing a book about that crew. So the book is almost finished. It's been 3 years in the making. I am I'm co-writing it with him, but he's primarily the writer. But anyway, in 5 years, I'd like to see a publishing deal and a movie deal from that book. So that's my big goal, my next biggie.
Now, did these guys fight like you did? I mean, was it a fighting crew?
Oh, no. There was probably two other guys, Rowdy and I don't know if I mentioned his name, but anyway, Rowdy, he looked just like Clint Eastwood, so we called him Rowdy Yates. So Rowdy, yeah, he got in a few, but I was primarily the the guy that everybody told to calm down. But we just traveling. I mean, we were the only rappel crew in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, the only rappel crew in the United. Now they have, not to get sidetracked, but they have reinstituted that program. So with a different type of helicopter, but the type we used and all that, yeah, we were the only ones that did that. So anytime you had a lot of trees or steep canyons, that's where we would rappel into. Places you can't hike into and you can't jump into. So we were quite a crew. And and so that's my 5-year thing. Is hopefully we'll get a publishing deal and then maybe a movie deal, and I'll be the stunt coordinator on that movie.
Have you got any kids?
I have a stepdaughter, Jessie. She lives in Arizona.
Okay. Is
She
that
thinks you're,
is that Debbie's daughter?
yes.
Okay. 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 And can you tell me about your heritage?
My mom is German and my dad was Italian. My mom was a singer in Vegas for 20 years.
Wow.
And she retired at the Palm Springs Follies in Palm Springs after 15 years on that show. She still does a little bit of singing on occasion. My dad was Italian and he was a combat pilot in Korea. And he also flew for the Strategic Air Command. And he has also taught me how to fly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he was incredible. He was a lousy dad, but a great pilot.
My dad was a lousy dad too, but you know what? He took care of me.
Hey, you know what? The only time we really got along was in the cockpit or on the golf course.
Good, good, good. What have I missed, Dan? Anything else that you want to mention or pitch?
No, not at all. A great interview, Larry. It was nice meeting you. And I will say this, if you want to look at some funny stories, back to Robin, Debbie, for my birthday years ago, got a hold of a lot of people in different chapters of my life and had them submit what she called a Dan Bell story. What story do you have that with Dan? And there's all kinds of stuff. Well, Robin thought it was so funny, she put it online. She made a whole website called danbellstories.com. And I wanted to thank Robin for that. In fact, I'll be calling her tomorrow. But Robin and Fatty, I love you both. And look out for the Hella Repeller movie.
Okay, how do I get the website?
Well, I haven't seen it in years, but it's called danbellstories.com.
Okay, I'll try to find it.
Now,
I can call Robin too.
do you talk to Robin still?
Yeah, still do.
Well, I'm anxious to talk to her tomorrow, and and I'm sure you'll be a topic of information for sure.
Well, check out the interview that I had with her. It was a great interview.
Oh, I really will. I want to see the others too, with Carl Cefalio and some of the other guys I know.
Yeah,
That's very good.
Rocky Capello's coming up.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Oh, Rocky, he started me in the business.
Is that right?
Hey, I want you to make a note. You ask Rocky about Dan Bell and Louisiana, the Mississippi mud. He will fucking crack up. He'll fucking crack up.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
In the next couple of weeks, it'll be up on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Will you join us again in the future to give us an update on your book and your career?
Oh, I'd love it. Give me a shout anytime.
Great. It was terrific talking with you, Dan. You're quite a character.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But thanks, Larry. That was really fun reminiscing about some of that stuff. And I am quite sure we'll probably cross paths again.
Okay. Be well, my friend.
Adios, amigo.
Adios.
And you will be happy too.